Thank you for taking the time to come. I will just share a bit about what we are doing and what we are passionate about. Uh, so, if you don't mind, I'll just run through some slides. I think it's I'm trained as an architect, so a picture paints 1,000 words. So, art and architecture I added the new word there, living city. We are all learning. I felt that Kuala Lumpur is famous for its food, but you can find Malaysian food anywhere, including in Osaka, where they're selling roti canai for 55 ringgit. But I felt it was missing intellectual stimulation. When we travel, we always visit cities, and I always make it a point to visit at least one art gallery, however short my time there. And when I was growing up, my kids were growing up, they hated going to museums, but now they are young working adults. They now and then send me back a photo of a painting that resonated with them when they were kids, And they said, wow, this painting, now they understand what it meant. And they can't remember where they stayed or what food they ate, but they always remember a piece of art that they saw, even though they were playing their computer games, but they left an indelible mark on them. And I think that's quite important for a country, and especially Kuala Lumpur. So initially, we just wanted to inject art back into the city. Architecture, at one point we had the tallest buildings in the world, Twin Towers. They are still the tallest Twin Towers in the world. We have the tallest flagpole many years ago. Then we have the second tallest building after Burj Khalifa. So architecture-wise, I think we know how to work architecture. But the art side, sadly, we felt it was very lacking. And there are a lot of good artists in Malaysia. After Indonesia and Thailand, we are probably, if we are not numero uno, we are close to it. But it's because people don't seem to have that understanding of that, and their perceptions are only limited to what they can feel, what they can smell, what they can eat and taste. So there was this other part that is subliminally important, and but not in there. It's being recorded, so I shouldn't say things about the government. But sometimes governments are very important because they have the resources, and it takes people like Justin and to do something like this, to restore an old building. Okay, so I injected the new word living there because I found out that after we brought life into this part of the city is still dead at night. And when there's nobody here at night, it's not a living city. And whereas you go to London, you go to New York, Paris. New York is a 24-hour city. Tokyo as well. And I think we need to move towards that. Okay. I'll explain later why. Before that, maybe I'll just touch a bit about this. We are in a very interesting period in our life and in the history of the world. We are in the AI revolution. Everyone's afraid that they will lose their jobs or they might become irrelevant. I think the word relevancy becomes very important. And I sit back and I see mental health issues in universities and students, and because they see all these social media things and it affects them because they think they're missing out, fear of missing out, FOMO. And it actually has, a lot of implications on society as a whole. But it is something that's going to happen, and before we come to a utopian bliss, I think there will be a revolution. Okay, a revolution. Most revolutions are pretty rough, but it's coming. So when I started as an architect, people always ask us, is architecture an art or a science? Because you have to study maths, you have got no structures, calculation. Otherwise, you don't even get through to the course. So a lot of people who became architects were the best in the science stream. If you're Malaysian, they segregate you to arts and science. I think now in retrospect, it's actually a very silly thing because the people who went to science are all nerds and the people who went to arts, they are not interested in art nor science. They just couldn't get into science. Okay. So I think some of those realities are what we went through, our generation. And so when we come out as architects or we come out through the science stream, doctors, lawyers, etc., the cream of the crop were in science stream. They have very little appreciation or understanding of what arts is. And our school system, even though you got thrown into art stream, never understood what arts is about. Okay, if you look at developed nations, the arts are as important, if not more important, than the science. Okay, let's leave it as that. But I've always been intrigued by art and science, and in this age of AI, there's a very interesting phenomena and a formula, and it's known as the Koch snowflake. It was discovered many years ago, and it was, I think, 1904, and this guy came up with this whole understanding. It's a mathematical formula that looks at a snowflake of a finite area with an infinite boundary. And that, in some sense, is where science merges with art. Because in reality, it cannot be. A square is a square, it's got a fixed area. You buy a piece of land, it's got bearings and dimensions. You buy a condo, it has fixed dimension. But basically what the formula said in Koch snowflake was it was a finite area with an infinite, and that's how it actually looks. And if you look at it closely, it is incredible. It is infinity. So after many years of being in the design field, you always think, wow, this is the design to kill them all. No? There'll be no more design evolutions after that. And yet, the next week you open a magazine and say, your 4-letter words will come and say, what the? It has moved to a next level. And in some sense, it's a finite thing, but there's an infinite parameters, and that is the dimension of art. Interestingly, this formula and other mathematical fractal equations is now what is creating the AI world that we know it. When NVIDIA and all these created these chips, it came from computer gaming and language. It came from something that was infinite to create something that is today what we know as AI. So I think I just want to start with that because it gives us a perception to try and break out of our normal way of thinking. It is not always 100 square, it is 100 square feet, but the parameters are all different. This is Kuala Lumpur, and because we are talking about looking at the city around us, that's a beautiful building, by the way. I'm so glad I see a photo of it there. Most people look at it and see it's terrible. It's a fascist building, it's monumental, but I've brought a lot of architects, designers, and they always tell me they want to buy that building because it's incredible. It looks like Iron Man could have his office right up there. It's that kind of a building. Okay, it's got a finite area, but it's got infinity potential. So in some sense, I'm just trying to explain a physical object that in a very different way of looking at things. This is Kuala Lumpur. We are very young. We are not like 1,000 years old. We are not like even 500 years old. We are maybe about 140 years old, 150 years old. Built on the confluence of two rivers. The rivers are just down there. I gave a talk recently on sustainability and biodiversity. And I asked AI to generate out some images of Kuala Lumpur 2050, 2070. And I put one dystopia overtaken by humanoids. Every one of the image that AI generated out had the Twin Towers, for sure. It always has a public bank in between for some reason. Because I think a lot of people took that picture and it's loaded up and it always captures that. It always has the river. whatever you do. Nobody takes pictures in front of the river. As far as I know, there's no Instagram picture in front of Klang River because it's not Instagrammable. But yet, every one of them had the river. I don't know why. So in some sense, it's a very important parameter in KL. One day we will have to tackle it. Many people have tried. It's not easy because it's a monsoonal river. It's not big like Chao Phraya or even the Irrawaddy that, it rains a whole month and the water just comes out 6 inches. This river goes up 3 meters to 5 to 6 meters in just one afternoon rain. So there are a lot of challenges there. And a small advertisement for Klang River Festival is on later part of this month. Please go and... The river is a very important part of KL. It needs to come back. So anyway, we have grown even though we are very young. I published a book straight after COVID. It was called New in the Old, Chinatown, Kuala Lumpur. There was a renaissance going on here, and small businesses, including yours, people were making an impact. It did not come from government. It did not come from even an NGO. It just came from individuals. And we documented it, including all the hero stories of Hokkien Mee being invented in Petaling Street, the soya bean guy. We've got all of them documented in this book. For no other reason than to tell people who come to Kuala Lumpur that there is history. The buildings are listed there with a bit of a story. And as well as that, it's got 3 walking tours. That means you not just only read about it, you get a chance to experience it. If you got a chance, please pick up a copy. Yeah, I think the other thing was, because 118 was coming up, we were quite afraid that it will change the demography of this place. And before it changes the demography, the people who come in to work there are office workers. It's very different from previously where they were shop owners who lived upstairs. So we were starting to see a possibility of a demography change. Well, it hasn't taken place yet because of Malaysia. If you go and see Burj Khalifa, the whole area around it for the next 10 miles will all change because of one tower. So that's the impact of a tall piece of architecture. Cities are very important, and Angkor Wat is Borobudur. It had a great civilization around it, then it sort of disappeared. Same like the ones in South America. And a lot of us think that we are the smartest generation on the planet Earth, but it's not true. Every civilization at its apex were very smart. I mean, the Aztecs and the Mayans figured out that the world, they mapped out, they put people on the ziggurats, and all their life they were just plotting the stars movement. And they didn't have computers, but yet they knew that the Earth was round, and there were stars and constellations out there. And people were traveling in the ships with no Google Earth in those days, and it was amazing. So every civilization at its apex were very smart. They were not only very smart, they were very cultured. So I like these old pictures of Angkor Wat where, it's publicized that it was discovered by some French guys at a certain year, cutting through the forest. But it has always been there. And if you ask the locals, they'll say, oh, we always know it's there. But when they found the old city, how do they know it's a great city? They find architecture. They don't find, what you ate the last night, before a city collapse or something, but they find architecture. And when they dig deeper into the architecture, they find pottery, they find art. And these places are full of it. It's full of art. So I used to promote art. I had this sort of catchphrase that said that a bankrupt nation is devoid of any good art. And you receive back and think, wow, okay, I wouldn't say we are devoid, but we need to improve. So that's where we are coming at as an architect and as a person who wants to inject back some life into Kuala Lumpur. I've always been impressed by MoMA. I think those of you who love art, you've been there. To me, it's the mother of all museums. Both my sons were in New York last week, and they haven't been to a MoMA, and they went there. I told them to go. They are in their 20s, and they told me this place has everything, and they were so impressed. But it was actually, they had a lot of involvement of architects, Philip Johnson, etc. And it started with some great exhibitions of architecture, the international style that we know today, glass buildings and so on. It was exhibited there. And Philip Johnson was very influential in starting it up. But what I liked about the MoMA story was it didn't start as a city block. Today it's a city block. And if anyone else wants to sell, they'll buy it because they can afford it. And it's an institution. But it started from a little townhouse and it grew from there. So art is something that I felt could last more than corporations. It could actually, and you find paintings that are very, very old and yet they still hold its importance as well as value. Okay, so it grew through the years, and I always like to share this impact too of how architecture and art can transform a city. This is Guggenheim, and it's now today known as the Bilbao effect. Those of you who know Bilbao, before Guggenheim started, it was a very industrial city. When I say very industrial, it's very industrial. And there's no real town center except for a part of the old town. It was just industries. And several years ago, my eldest son, Matthew, suddenly sprang a surprise on me and he said, I want to study architecture. I nearly fell off my chair because it's not something easy to do. So I had to plan, where am I taking him? Because he's starting school the next year. Where am I going to take him? At that Christmas halls, I decided I'm going to take him to Bilbao. Because I felt that it was the one place where I could show him the power of architecture to transform not just a city, but this thing that is known as the Bilbao effect is in every city in the world today. Every mayor talks about it, and they try to achieve it in different ways. I've just come back from Korea in the Dongdaemun Culture Center by Zaha Hadid. Incredible piece of work, and that's exactly what the Guggenheim does. But a lot of people forget that it's not only the piece of architecture, but it is what is in the architecture. And it's filled with some, you can spend half a day. We walk around the building taking pictures, half a day, and then we finally went in, and my kids went, wow. There was light coming through, the space was, very exuberant, and after that, you look at the art and you say, you just get incredibly encapsulated by all this. Incredible. Yeah. So art and architecture transforming the whole city. This was in Indonesia a couple of years back. KOS did an inflatable in Prambanan Temple. One of the things about UNESCO sites is when I've taken my office I've been to Angkor Wat about 7 times. First time, wow, I was so energetic. Of course, I was younger. Second time, I was still very energetic. I went out all the museums, all the buildings and so on. Third time, I went out half the buildings. Fourth time, I told the tour guide, said it all looks the same. And he said, thank you very much. That's a compliment because we are supposed to keep everything the same. Then the last couple of times I went in my office, I was admiring it from afar with a beer in my hand. And, it's interesting that sometimes it's so well kept, like some museums, and yet it has incredible things in it, but people just don't come back. And this is an interesting phenomena where in Indonesia, this inflatable in front of Prambanan Temple, 1,000-year-old temple, suddenly became the most Instagram image in the whole of Indonesia. And all the young people who, not interested in the old, suddenly asked, where's this place? And they wanted to go there and just see it. But it was there for a month, I think. Yeah. This is arguably Malaysia's most important painting. Ibrahim Hussein's My Father and the Astronaut. I like this painting from many years ago, and you might get a chance to see it in Art October. There's a Ibrahim Hussein special show. I've seen the original work. It's kept by the wife and the family. It's an amazing piece of work. And it was done in 1969 when man landed on the moon. The man landing on the moon is a work of art, you know, because since that time, they can't figure out how to get there again. So in some sense, it's quite an interesting phenomena. In 1969, when it landed, it was a big event. I remember a year later, there was a Museum Negara had the exhibition, and I went there with my family. My parents took me there. We were very young. I was like 5, 6 years old, but it left an indelible mark because I saw a man, an astronaut suit, and I saw the capsule model of it. But interestingly, it's talking about the father who's got his working suit, and then the spaceman with all his paraphernalia from the future. But interestingly, if you look in the visor of the astronaut, even though he's so advanced with every piece of technology he's got, he still thinks he's still got memories of his home. And this part of art that carries the memories is exactly what I shared with the experience with my children. They, after some time, you know, they will send me a WhatsApp picture and they said, wow, we just saw this again, and you know, they start to have different stories to tell out of it. Okay. So if you look around us, there's a lot of opportunity. The fabric is rough. It's a raw piece of canvas. I own one of these buildings. It's a 4-story walk-up in Ilmu BB. I don't know if any of you have visited any of our urban museums, but this was my first one. It's an experience setting it up. Maybe later we'll have a discussion. I decided to experiment with one small one. I did a small one because I could afford to do a small one, but I was also, nobody has done it before in Malaysia, and I didn't know whether it would work. So I wanted to do a small experiment. And I owned the second one there, and then managed to transform it. In some sense, it's I took it from My Father and the Astronaut, and it is the visor of. If you stand there, you can actually see the KL tower in the reflecting in it. The modern KL in the glass, but it was in a very rustic old setting. So I transformed a 4-story walk-up. It had 8 apartments, and I converted it into a simple small museum. This is something that I wanted to do because because I targeted it to a visitor who knows nothing about KL. So when you come in, the first curated. Okay, the other thing was I had to curate it myself because I tried to hire some curators, well-known curators, and after a while, I don't know if they had chicken feet or cold feet. Sorry, they had cold feet and they pulled out on me, or they just pulled out on me, and I had no choice, so I had to curate it myself. And I can always do the hardware, the building, but I was never so certain I could do the software. So lo and behold, we curated it. So I did Colors of Malaysia because that's the ad that promoted Malaysia very well, and everyone remembers it. Then as you go to the back of the first gallery, I took out the back window, the whole wall, I took it out, and you can actually see where the garbage is thrown twice a day. And you know, it was, to me, it was a piece of art. The only thing was it had a very bad smell. So I put a glass there and I sealed it to make sure the smell doesn't come through. But you're basically right in front of the garbage bin, and it's reflective glass. So when people actually, every day there are people throwing rubbish there, and there are scavengers going through it after that, and there are rats and cats at night. So it's like a 24-hour piece of art. But I wanted to show that behind every glamorous city, there is actually the heart and soul of it that works. Somebody has to do this work, but it's never glorified. During COVID, this building became available. It was featured on Ken Young's book, Architecture of Malaysia, and it became available, and I acquired it. And then this one just down the road also became available, and I acquired it. And it's almost free. So some of the things we have tried to do is we have tried to imprint it with anime, and to try and reach the new generation. I basically leave it to my young people to run it, because I actually run my architecture practice and also a lot of other things. But the new gen are very different, and I just want to empower them. Sometimes they just don't get the opportunity. We were very afraid we couldn't find people to run it. So we are always looking for my architects to transfer some of them there. But when we put out, we never had to take out paid ads for staff. We put out on Instagram and all this social media, and we had a lot of inquiries. And now I think today we got like 25 in our staff, right? Something like that. So that's Bukit Bintang, and then in 3 years we have done 3 urban museums, and yeah, that's my talk. I didn't want it to be a monologue. I hope it wasn't, and maybe we can open it for questions and discussion.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Dr. Tan. Obviously, a fascinating story going from an architect to now kind of like an art museum owner as well. I guess even for myself, because for those who may not know about my own background, actually, I'm not Malaysian. And so my kind of experience with Malaysia has also been one of discovery and kind of really uncovering what the city has to kind of tell me as well, right? And so actually, I kind of love to ask some questions since I have the opportunity today.
Sure.
Maybe we kind of learn a little bit from that. Doctor, I was really wanting to ask also, like, obviously you started with this one museum back in Bukit Bintang. What gave you the confidence to actually open up 3 in just a span of 3 years?
Craziness. Okay, so the first one was because I owned the property for a while, and I felt it was in the right location. It's in a gritty part of town. So, I like to say it's in the bohemian part of town. Okay? Lovely Bangladesh community. They are very nice people. Whenever I need help, they come and help me. My big tree at the front that I planted came down the road one day, and there were all these Bangladeshis helping me to pull it back up from the top. And I thought they were just laborers. I asked him, "Thank you so much. Where are you from?" And he says, "I own that restaurant. I own that hotel." They were all the bosses. And I thought, wow, this is an interesting community. And so why I was never sure of the software, because I didn't, art people are quite funny people. We are nice. We are normal people. I found that most of those who work with me, they are kind of normal, but some art people, you can't understand what they're saying. If you know what I mean. They always make art like it's a very high and mighty thing, but sometimes I think it's not so good to do that. So I was afraid. The only fear we had was not finding the people who run it. And later when I settled that problem, we found lawyers wanting part-time work. We found what type of demography? A lot of people who just wanted part-time work, and they were all intellectually stimulated people. They wanted to contribute, and they loved art. Just that there was never such an avenue. And if you do it for the government, like the government museums, you need to be a public servant. It's quite hard to get in. And so once we solved that, and we started to charge 10 ringgit to try to cover back the costs. Now it's 20 ringgit, yeah. But we've never had major complaints on the price, and some people say it's very cheap. I don't know. But then I found that I could cover the costs. I cannot get back my money for the renovations, because that to me is capex. Capital expenditures is sunk in. But I could cover the day-to-day. So as long as I covered the day-to-day, I didn't worry anymore, because I could make it work. I found the model to make it work. So the second building that became available was during COVID. Um, it was the second COVID variation, that Delta, I think, where many people died, and suddenly the price dropped tremendously. So once you buy a building and you got space, I have this passion to throw art into it. Yeah. So the third one was the same thing. The building became available, and we felt we could transform it, and we did. I'm not sure if I'll do any more in the city center, but I'm currently building one in Petaling Jaya, which is a sculpture museum on top of a hill, and looking to do one in Port Dickson, because Port Dickson has no attractions. So I thought I'll just do one there as well. So those are my little small projects. When you're an architect and you deal with clients, sometimes you do very mundane things. Sometimes they tell you your design not so good, then you say, now I'll go back and design my museum. So in a way, it's therapy.
Something I can really appreciate, because something I personally even discovered is that one of the challenges, I guess, with the Malaysian art scene is a lot of it is quite insular. Not a lot of Malaysian art gets promoted overseas. We don't hear about it on the international level, and then I think even within Malaysia, it's hardly seen that you actually see a lot of retrospectives, a lot of kind of like presentation of art collections, because a lot of it tends to be held quite privately. Like, what's your own experience been in terms of trying to get access to some of these collections, and also maybe the people behind them?
I think that's a very good question. And so after I did my first one, a bit rambling, but I'll just tell you the story. First one, you're always afraid to show your collection because people might think your collection is shit. Mickey Mouse, not serious stuff. So I asked a couple of big collector friends who very respected, and then everyone says, okay, sure, doc, no problem, we'll put it in one floor. Then as the place gets ready and I start curating, and then they ask me, hey, what's your security like? What insurance you've got? And then your neighborhood looks a bit rough. Then after a while, everyone pulls out, and then you realize, gosh, it's left me, and I got no way to turn back. So the first one ended up being my collection. And, thank God it's acceptable. There's always this. Then the second one, I made it a point. It shouldn't be just another of my collection. It's quite boring after a while. And I know a lot of these collectors. Malaysia has been producing great art by great local artists. The thing is, in this art community, when the works are ready, and it still happens today it's even faster. They used to get in before social media, before Instagram and WhatsApp. Before the show starts, the galleries will invite their private collectors. Okay, and they always come. If you say it's starting on Wednesday for private collectors, the real serious private collector will be there on Monday, even before the preview, and they will take the best. Okay, so when you come on the preview night, already all the good ones are taken, and then when you come for the official opening, you're only left with a few pieces. So the best works, and it happens all over the world, the best works are collected by the people who are the big collectors. Today is the same. Today is an e-catalog. You send an e-catalog, sometimes in a meeting I have to stop 5 minutes because I need to reply, otherwise that piece is gone. So I in my meetings now, I say, oh, excuse me. Then I quickly scroll through, I take a screenshot, and I say, hold for me. So these big collectors out the best works. And what you see coming out at auction are not always the best work. They are the works that somebody else bought that was not a serious collector, and now he's pushing it back into the market. So how do you promote Malaysian art when the best works are kept in storage or in their offices or places where it's not open to the public? So I approached I approached them again the second time. And this time, because they saw that the first one worked, nobody burned my paintings, and there were no harsh remarks in the Google reviews. And they're also very afraid people will say bad things about their collection because of, I don't know, sometimes. So we didn't lose any piece of work. We didn't get it torn up or, so they felt very confident. And so Pakarudin, one of Malaysia's biggest collectors, I would say he's got the best collection of the past 30 years, Malaysian. He only buys Malaysian art, very focused. And he agreed to come in, and incredible works there. And the third one, again, I didn't feel it should be my collection. And Ng Sik San has a huge collection that he keeps in his Tenggiri place, and the roof is leaking, and I felt he really I need to rescue the paintings. So that is only like a small portion of what he has. And these guys have a good eye for collecting. And I felt the public need to see it. And from there, I think appreciation of great art will happen in Malaysia. If you notice the big collectors in Europe, Western art, they were pretty wealthy people. They owned palazzos and so on. So they used to have parties, and you would see the latest piece of, their best collection will be there, and people could actually see it. And the works become well publicized. But here, I've seen someone even keeps it in a refrigerated, air-conditioned container at the back of his house. And nobody gets to see it. But I hope it will create more of a trend that people bring their works up.
Yeah,
so that's how I got into the other two, and
yeah, I think a great thing that you're doing now as well is also, you're doing a lot beyond just kind of having the artwork. I think there's a lot of talks. There's actually a lot of kind of further exhibitions, even just of different shows that are happening as well. I mean, you might share a little bit about like how have people been receiving kind of the work that you guys have been doing now? Do you see it? Do you feel like it's actually multiplying? Like, do you feel like there's a larger audience?
For sure. I mean, I don't know most of people here. Almost every time we have a talk, I see people I don't recognize. It's not good when you keep talking to your own audience, And I think the other thing that is actually run by the staff. I try not to get involved in it because people think I'm old school, and I think the young ones have a lot to contribute, and they just don't have the avenue for it. So our staff they can handle it all, and we give them the empowerment to do it. There's a lot more, when I showed the thing with a finite area and an infinity boundary, it's basically when you start one museum, it gives you that infinity. It's very hard to describe. It's not a one-trick pony that can only do one trick. It can do multiple things. And this year, we wanted to emphasize on mental health. I'm an adjunct professor in University Malaya. And after COVID, we get students telling us they got mental health issues. They are stressed. I said, what the hell? When I was a student, the teacher just thought you didn't have enough beer. We never heard of such things, but today kids are going through this thing, and even lecturers. Some lecturers say they need to take some break because they got mental health issues. And so art, I found that art in a lot of the big museums, once you start to, when you visit a museum, you only see one small part of what a museum does. And when I started talking to some of them, they said that, the museum hours are very funny. The tourists come in from 11 after breakfast, but sometimes they open early. And when they open early, they notice the same guys with a annual pass comes in. Before he goes to work, he sits there and keeps looking at the same painting. And then before the crowd comes, he goes off to work. And then lunchtime, they will pack, some lunch, and then they will be in the same square looking at the same sculpture. And kids come in, and elderly people come in, and everyone sees a different thing. It is one finite painting, but everyone sees a different infinity. And that's the power of art. It is not a char kway teow, you said, okay, 2 prawns, not 2.5 prawns. It's finite. And once you eat it, it's gone. But when the person looks into a painting, every one of them sees it in a different angle. And it's an infinite age. That's why I showed the snowflake there. And it's something that's very real. If you look at how kids today play computer games, they can see so many things happening. Whereas when we are old school, we said, who are you supposed to shoot? And where's the goal? Where's the point? They know exactly where to go. So they are much more into this formula. This formula is not two-dimensional. Actually, if you read more about it, it has a three-dimensional thing. It is not flat. So it is three-dimensional, and that's how they created the AI games. And the AI games chip that could power that kind of a dimension is what is empowering all our lives today. It's incredible. And so is it art or is it science? I would say it is both. And the thing that brings it all together is mathematics, language and mathematics. Broke through the art and science and made it into something that can be anything to anyone. Yeah. So I think, how did I divert to this? Basically, we've been running these programs with the Young People's Power. And some have been more successful than others. We are learning. Sometimes the timing is also very important. But the crowd has been different. And that to me is the most important. We don't want to be talking to the same audience.
I guess one question I also want to ask, for those who may not know, I think a lot of this entire pocket of downtown KL has changed tremendously over the last decade or so. In no part to folks like Dr. Tan or like to Rex and so forth. And so a lot of that kind of has now happened primarily from Tan Cheng Lok and down, down towards where Zhongshan building and, to where the 4 Points by Sheraton is. But actually a lot of this also now starting to happen to the north, I guess, like up towards where Toffee is, where Medan Pasar is as well, together with the Sultan Abdul Samad building. And I guess something I really resonate a lot with what you were saying earlier is this idea of possibilities, because I think that's what attracted even myself also to come here to KL to actually do this project years ago. And I continue to see the possibilities happening. And I think one of the most amazing things actually about this area that we're in is not just that there are possibilities, but it's also being built on the back of very diverse communities. Like one big thing that, for myself, having lived a long time in Singapore, is in Singapore you see a lot of very top-down driven kind of policy, right? They have all kinds of planning in place. They have big urban development plans. They have all these types of programs. But here, I mean, in some ways we don't have that luxury, but it's also has been replaced by a lot of grassroots activation, right? And I think one of the magical things is the fact that even though without any coordination, so much has been been brought up by various interest groups, various small communities, and even though this is one downtown KL, it's occupied by so many different small communities, or there's so much space kept for these communities. And so I guess maybe as an urban design professional, I wanted to ask what do you feel? How do you feel about the current state of our downtown and the kind of ongoing evolution? What is your hope for this place that we're in?
Well, we wish we had a top-down like Singapore. It'll make it much easier for us. But it's Malaysia is always a lot more relaxed. We like to think. So we are so relaxed that sometimes the only way to get something done is to just do it yourself. But that's the uniqueness about us. I have a lot of architect friends from Singapore who come here and then they really admire our lifestyle because they said down there they can't do this, can't do that. And everything is the mighty dollar. Down here, sometimes we can do a lot more with what we have. And thank you for coming here and taking a nice building and transforming it. You've done a great job.